Okay, so this is an example program to illustrate how the vector class can be used in Java. A vector is basically a dynamic array. You can keep adding any number of elements to the array and its size automatically increases. And in order to use the vector class, you need to import this util package. So this particular program, what it does is it generates an array of 10 unique integers in the range 0 to 100, and it computes then the largest among them. So I want to generate those integers randomly. So I also use this random class. First of all, I put all my programs inside a try catch block. So you have a try and then a catch block. So I first have the random class. This is the name of the class, and then this is the object name. I could give any name for this object. I just call randgen, and this is the constructor for the random class, and I'm passing the current system time in milliseconds since January 1, 1970 as the seed for this random number generator. Then I initialize my vector. This is the name of the vector object. Any name could be given, but this is the name of the class vector, so you have to use this name vector. And it's an empty, no argument constructor. uh, Now you could go through the so just the vector is just initialized here. So now you can go through a for loop that basically needs to generate 10 random integers. So I go through this for loop. So this is how you generate a random integer using this random class object. So this is the object name dot next int, and then remember I want to generate here random integers from 0 to 100. So I pass in 101 to indicate that that's the next largest value after 100, but the random integer will be generated from 0 to 1 less than this value. So if I want to generate from 0 to 100, I have to pass 101 here. Okay, so anything from 0 to 100 could be generated. Now another requirement I have is all those integers have to be unique. So I want to make sure that this rand int I generated is not yet in this element vector. So for that I use this contains method of this vector. So element vector dot contains new integer of rand int. So which means if this rand int is there, so I have to use a wrapper class to access the elements of the vector. That's one thing you have to know. So you cannot just say contains rand int. We have to use a wrapper class to access that integer, and you know it's an integer, so that's why you have to use the integer wrapper class. If you know it is a double, you have to use a double wrapper class, and so on. Now if it contains, then we cannot add this rand int again to this element vector, so because we want unique elements. So which means I basically generate another rand int inside the while loop, again from 0 to 100, and again go back to the condition of the while loop and check if that new rand int is there in the element vector. So you keep doing it until you are able to generate a random integer that is not in the element vector. So that's the time you come out of this while loop and add that random integer to that element vector. So this is how you add things to a vector depending on the data type. This is an integer int, so you have to use the wrapper class integer, and you have to add it as an object. So new integer rand int is going to be an object of class integer. You're adding it to the element vector. So you can even print the contents of that element vector. Then I want to know the maximum element value of the integers that you just added to the element vector. So this is a typical logic for finding the maximum element in an array. So I start with a very negative estimate, and then I could go through each of the elements of the array. So this is another method you should know. So I want to extract the elements of the vector at index 0, 1, 2, and so on. So I say element the vector object name dot get is a method of I. I is basically the index to the vector. So element vector dot get I is going to basically return whatever the integer object is stored in that index. Of course, when you retrieve things, it comes as this uh, an object of class object in Java, right? So you have to typecast it to the integer wrapper class, and then it's a scalar int. So this is what you do. So this is basically now an integer object. So you have to use dot int value to kind of retrieve the integer scalar integer value. So that's what you're doing here. So element is now a scalar int. Now you compare the maximum element with this element int element, and if it maximum element is less than this element, so which means there is something in the vector that is greater than your current estimate of the max element, so you set your max element to be equal to this element, and you repeat that for every element in the vector, and then when you come out of the for loop you can print the maximum element what it is. So let me show the execution of this. Okay. So these are the random integers, the 10 random integers, and this is the maximum element. Okay, 97. Right, let me stop.